Well, look at that. Not in the studio today. Do you hear those sounds? Ooh. Apologies if it's not up to one's expectations, but I figured I'd try something out different as just hearing, other noises like being inside a laundromat or inside a taxi or something of that nature isn't really what podcasting is all about. So for all you dumb podcasters in a hybrid kind of informational landscape, get out of your little boxes a little bit. Don't take yourself so seriously. And if you happen to have crashing waves in the background and seagulls and things of that nature, don't feel too bad about it. A lot of these disinformationists, the disinformation experts, these university graduates, associate professors, the cultural jammers that iced everybody of talent out of the institutions that, have a retirement plan and things of that nature. Yeah, podcasters, they don't necessarily have that, although they really like being in the podcasting game because, that's where apparently there's a lot of people that can listen into things and not pay for it or recognize it for the kinds of contributions that they are, not unrecognized, unpaid for, despised, suppressed, ostracized, alienated kinds of voices that have been, let's say, the defining voices of our time that aren't recognized as such because we have a cultural war as well as a hybrid war going on. A lot of know-it-alls, professionals, stooges, the landscape people have come to expect in the West, thanks to, shall we say, Eastern malfeasance or a confluence of influence, including financial sectors such as the Dark Trace and Morgan Stanley people yachting off the coast of Sicily, and then whoopsie-doops, navigational issues just like in Wagging the Dog. Those vessels sometimes go down under mysterious circumstances like tornadoes popping up for no reason. Just different kinds of bad surprises happening to different kinds of bad people. Can happen. That's why karma is a real thing. But it's not so direct. It doesn't always happen in real time, in real life, and things of that nature. It can happen in future lives. If you're reborn as something other than human, for example, that's considered to be a bad rebirth. But you could be reborn as a seagull. Look at that. We got a seagull here in on the action. What are you trying to convey to the audience? Yeah. See, somebody knows. That's a message for someone in the audience. Somebody who understands seagullese. Maybe he's saying, preach, brother, tell them before they get reborn as a seagull, because it's slim pickings in this neighborhood. But let's not look at it that way. Look how abundant nature is. Nature is very abundant. The ocean, that's one of the great things about the ocean, is how abundant it is. It's gigantic. It's impossible for a human being to fathom. That's how big it is. We're sort of like water bugs, just stuck to the surface. We don't really have much of an understanding for how big nature is. And that does put our problems in context, doesn't it? That our problems essentially are not very big. I encourage everyone, get out of your office, your cubicle, your neighborhood, your house, your state of mind, and take a look up, take a look at the sky if you are feeling down, and try to just grasp how infinite the universe is. Your little mind, your little puny mind, it's not capable of doing it. But just stare, just zone out, just focus on the breath, because that's what living is about. It's not about complaining about people, places, or things, historical epochs, bad management, bad governance, bad values, bad behavior. It's not about that at all. It's about getting out there and appreciating how abundant this plane of existence can be. It doesn't have to pay you back. It's already paid you back. Being here is payback. The human condition, human life, is a very fortunate thing. It's very good because it also gives us the possibility of improving our characters, of letting go of all different kinds of dissatisfaction, especially the smallest, most annoying kinds that we otherwise wouldn't do if we didn't take the time to cultivate ourselves deeply. And when I say deeply, I mean much deeper than you've probably done up until now, because how long does it take for you to be annoyed by something if you're not being mindful? It can probably happen right now. Look, something just happened that could throw you off track. Don't let it do that. Come back to the breath. Let it go. You've got perhaps minutes to live. 2 minutes. I'll give you 2 minutes. But God might not give you those 2 minutes, but He might. And if He does, give Him some thanks. Let thanks be some of the last words on your mind and on your mouth for this life, for this fortunate life, for this fortunate dimension. But yeah, the dark trace thing, very, very suspicious. I'm not saying who done it. I don't know who does these things. I think we can look at things like that just from the standpoint of karma. If you rip people off, if you misrepresent yourself, if you work for the wrong people or take the wrong deals. Now, I'm not saying that these people did that, but the facts do look a little strange, especially because I think one of his partners happened to die in a car accident or was run over or something like that a couple of days ago, and you start getting involved in a couple of billions. And yeah, that's not the way to make friends and influence people. Is it? No. So don't live that way, don't go that way, don't do those things. I think their lives speak for that. Because it's always the conceit of criminally minded people that they're going to get away with it, that they're somehow smarter than your average bear, and then it sort of adds up, and then you have these questionable kinds of situations where, we don't know where they will be reborn. I think a banker happened to be on the boat. Was it Morgan Stanley? It's a dark trace, Morgan Stanley. I don't know. Are bankers in the cybersecurity game? People, look at these devices you're sporting around and realize that in the 1950s, when there was a proper Cold War and people were willing to admit it because they couldn't not admit it because it was that obvious. But it did take them some time, a couple of years to figure that out. They did not strategically plan for these things, or the personalities that are behind these companies, and faceless, weird managers. I think the CFO was from a different country that possibly could be in the dictator alliance. It was told that, maybe the UK or the West was responsible for the crushing poverty in his mismanaged country, so he had some kind of axe to grind against all Westerners, so he could just open-end attack or undermine people from the West without having any of those little pangs of conscience or things of that nature. I mean, was he like that? Did he think like that? Does he think like that? Because I don't think he was invited to the yacht. We don't know, but possibly. Possibly there's a lot of people like that around. So do watch your minds. Do remember that every thought is a deed, is an act. Now, we're not often conscious of the acts, of the thoughts that we have, but they are karma producing, right? There's a causality. If you're thinking bad thoughts, how far away is that from bad deeds? Do you not have to have bad thoughts first before you commit bad deeds? Or perhaps you don't think they're bad deeds because you're not reflecting properly whether or not your deeds are bad or not. And that itself is a, let's say, neglect of your own personal responsibility to yourself to review whether or not your thinking is in line with principles that are good. A lot of people think they're doing the good thing or think they're doing the good thoughts when in fact they're not. So if that's the case, you are personally responsible for that. So your little grubby, stupid teachers, your minders, your ideological betters, they told you something, taught you something, you went in that way. Well, at some point it becomes your own damn personal responsibility to cleanse and scrub off the grotesque dirt that you're carrying around in your mind. Ideologies of all kinds, man-hating, LGBTQTS+, whatever, that was another story that broke. Because Bulgaria, you wouldn't think it, but the Bulgarian government has had a credibility problem now for several years. I mean, since the noughties, the 90s, that didn't really change anything for the common people there except make things worse, because the political class then didn't even have to make any gestures towards the working class, because they transitioned into the radical class, which is also a money class. Like they're in it for the money. The bongoists, they can just openly be bongoist, and then they have a couple of stories like that they're capitalists now. But that's not really true, is it? Because you have to have all these government backers and friends and everything else to get the contracts to be a capitalist success in post-Soviet countries to a large extent. Now, there are exceptions. I'm going to say Poland to 60%, 70%. It's true. Baltic states maybe a little higher, but let's say Estonia is probably the best example, whereas Lithuania is sort of less that, and Latvia maybe in between those two. Can we get some scientists on this type of analysis, or is that not politically correct at this time? Well, it hasn't been very correct, has it, for the last 30 plus years, the epoch of infamy, as I call it, in Eastern Europe, where you had essentially, Western mobsters and banksters and classist, back a bunch of wonks that they thought were just in it for the money, but in fact, they just said that because it was really about poor that they were into. Like all these malignant leftists, that's finally what motivates them, is sadism. It's not the money. Money's just part of it, right? Sadism is the main game they're in. Because they'll operate a country at a loss to get that poor, so that they can essentially rub everybody's nose in it, micromanage people, and tell them what to do or sabotage them. You know, if you think of it as a social game, economy is just one part of it. Like, their stooges have little ceremonies and medals given out to them, whereas their competition get thrown in prison and tortured, their families get broken up, kind of thing. See, they take it to that extent. And then you would think, well, why would they do that? Why would they put a scientist or a journalist or cultural person in jail? Well, it's all about vanity at the end of the day. They have to feel that they're better, and they can only do that if they've eliminated the competition. And the slop that they serve up, everyone says it's the best they've ever tasted, because that's the only kind of people that they tolerate around. So look at all of them in the Bulgarian parliament. So why the LGBTQTF, whatever? Why are they dispensing with that psyop? Well, their credibility is like so low that the parasitical legal class that is fronting for the dictator aligned kind of oligarchic toads are in fear of their lives. Essentially, the real numbers that are coming back is that people might at some point hunt them down and pay them back. Like in Romania, when that regime fell, pay them back for all of their good deeds to all those people whose lives they destroyed, because that's sort of how karma works, like causality works too. You rip off enough people, they don't believe you anymore, and then they sort of figure out what the people are that did that to them are, and then maybe their electricity goes out in the middle of the night, or their yacht hits a rock, or when they're going to pick up some luxury items, or 100 prostitutes from an airport, something explodes in their vicinity, and then they're no more. So they begin to start fearing for their lives. And that's really the only thing that sadists understand, right? Like, they're not idealists, they're realists, and their reality, it's that vulgar because they're that vulgar, and that is essentially the only thing that they understand, want to understand, will understand, are capable of understanding. So it's fear that motivates them. It's not any type of virtue. So they decided to dispense with that psyop because it's about as popular as radioactivity. But of course you have Psychlabus that claims that's not true. And they have PR companies funded by sadists behind them that say that normal people are the problem. But like I said, that's deeply unpopular, and so it's destabilizing. You'd have to think, like, who would suggest such policies and who would approve them? And it's sort of logical for a normal person, but for emotionalized 1984ists, the sky is falling, isn't it? But they're like 0.01% of the population. So do they really matter when entire electric grids or infrastructure starts falling apart and there's nobody to fix it, and maybe there's some people that are looking for people that would be responsible for criminal negligence on a scale that is hard to fathom. I think that's not a kind of place anyone would want to be that has two brain cells glued together. But these people aren't known for their smarts. They are known for their brutality, though. They're known for what? Schemerism, psychopathy, narcissism. That's sort of something that they know about. But wisdom, that's not something that defines them as a class. So leftoids without the working class, how's that going to work out for them? Well, they think it's going to work out for them. It's worked out for them in the last 30 years of infamy in a hybrid war where they've parasitized their populations. But, that type of strategy only works so long, doesn't it? And what do they have then? Are they going to have to go back to chain gangism? Just direct brutality, like, here you go. Here's your sawdust soup, and these guys with guns are going to tell you what to do, and if you don't do it, you disappear. I mean, is that the model that they're trying to import to the West now with their imported populations from places where they do that? Is that the idea? Is that the economic model? So it does look that way. It does. It does look that way. But whether or not it's sustainable, that's, again, the sadist class, they're always trying to come up with something sustainable, but they don't end up doing it because it doesn't really appear like their hearts or minds are in the right place. That's sort of it. That's what credibility's about. Come on. Forget these PR companies. Anybody can put ideas in distributions. You can put faces on posters. You can put slogans on posters. Everybody gets that. But credibility, that's not something you can maintain if you don't have it. If you don't have the things that make things credible. Like, how about working social infrastructure as well as economic infrastructure? And economic infrastructure is a part of social infrastructure. Allowing people that are qualified for the job to become part of the economic system that doesn't have an ideological component or a sadist class looking for any little thing that could cause some fat slob at the top, some type of agita that could sting them on a egotistical level, kind of ways of operating, like, what was it, the Dream Party of Georgia, or what the Moldovians had up until very recently. Because the effects of that are really, really, really bad. I mean, I think the Buddha would say that too. And, the Buddha wanted the best for everyone, sort of like Jesus too. I think Jesus would agree. What do you think? Christians, do you think there's a dogmatic schism as far as how Jesus or the Buddha would see these people? Would he consider them misguided despite their assets and holdings and opinions about themselves? What do you think? Is there a division? Or is it the same? What do you think? Yeah, I don't think there's a problem there. But, so yeah, they're dumping the LGBT thing like a hot bag of radioactive vomit in Bulgaria. That doesn't mean they're good people, though. Because do look at the videos of their parliamentarians. Probably the lowest dogs. I wouldn't even call them dogs, just life forms. Really greedy, motivated people. Sort of like they got itchy pants. There's another thing, these parliamentarians in Turkey, they recently came out boxing themselves. The greed is palpable. That's the top of the ant pyramid of resource allocation. So from the coffers of the working people to the ambitiously misguided despotic class and the people that are willing to box their way through that to get that for the people that don't deserve it, and in fact should be excluded from the political system because of that, because it is illicit activity. But look, they're the law, they're writing the law, they're the parliamentarians. How different is that in Berlin or Stockholm or London? I don't know. Seems like somebody figured that one out. So that's the extent of their smarts. Until the wheels come off, or again, a near peer competitor just blows them all up. Or leverages them. Like, hey, guess what? You have no military, so who are you again? You're rich here? Why? I mean, anybody can have that conversation with people that whose only skill is schemerism and bongoism. Eventually, we rely on our security agreements with countries that manage their populations better. Oh, really? And they're going to come to rescue you? Who are the people that see it that way? Why should they do that? What if they have to save their own big fat butts? What if they're a little paranoid? What if they're not sleeping as easy as the other toads? They're going to send the 7th Fleet? Is that right? How's the 7th Fleet doing? How they being managed? So what do we have at the end of the epoch of infamy? Is it a race to the bottom? So I don't know. Write in the comments. How do people see this thing coming to a head? How are my Bulgarians doing? What can be done? Can the Bulgarians get a mobilized party together? They can take that idea and run with it. I think Bulgarians need it even more than Americans do at this time. But yeah, don't take on fakers like the venture capitalist people and bankers. You know, they seem to have boating accidents along with cybersecurity companies. So strange how that sort of works, but you know, off-grid is looking better every day, which I come back to the wonderful sound of the ocean. Oh yeah, don't rely on security teams either that might be leveraged or be managed by people that couldn't manage McDonald's on a bad day or a good day. That isn't really promising for your personal safety, I would say. So do be advised that that's a problem. But, you know, criminals are a problem too. And we do know that where there's a bunch of toads and sadists, they do have a lot of crime, like a lot more crime than you would think. And I do think it goes hand in hand. I think they sort of understand each other on a real fundamental level. So they're always trying to make deals with criminals. But, you know, criminals, why are they criminals? Well, they're not really people you should trust, are they? Like, they're per definition not very fiduciary. But, you know, criminals think that they're so smart that their schemes are going to pay off for them because of that narcissism we discussed. So, yeah, what else is going on? UK. I think UK is coming to the end of its tether. It's starting to fall apart. Labour's in with the last trash of their political system. and they think they got 4 years to just do business as usual, but I think the UK needs to have a new election, and not a planned one, just an election of national emergency due to hybrid war conditions, which has a big political component of which the Labour Party is a big part. But of course, historians will establish these facts. We don't know what they'll say about it, but I think what they're going to try to do is flip things around, point the finger in the opposite direction like they've been doing. So what else? Oh, Democratic Party, Democratic National Convention is just a horrifying, grotesque display of total incompetence, which I would say they're the equivalent of the Labour Party. Vote every Democratic politician out of office as soon as possible, and do keep an eye on robotic clones on the Republican side, because nobody needs them either. Like, you can have the same thing under two labels. I think Vance and is part of that. I think also what they do is, like, their right operators is they just parrot. I mean, I wouldn't even say far right points because that's a ridiculous term, but they do listen to people who are authentic, and then they just repeat what they say, but they don't deliver. It's just for their own personal gains. Like Viktor Orban, they'll promise anything. I mean, okay, they might get rid of LGBTism, but that's not really a thing. That's just common sense. You shouldn't be teaching little kids that. Like, do they hand out porno magazines to kids now these days? Or you don't need to get into kids' sexuality. Okay, sex education is just, the ding-a-ling goes in the front hole and kids come out. And there's also, how about this, communicable diseases like syphilis that are up 80%. Primarily in the black community that they pretend to care about. They think they just have their votes on lock because they pay them welfare and keep them cooped up in chicken cages and ghettos, and misrepresent their culture as gangster rap, and which is a form of culture jamming. Any black person listening to this, that's not your culture, but that's what they think your culture is. So I would be offended if I was a black person. They said that that's my culture. I wouldn't consider it my culture at all. But it is a good way of seeing culture jamming, because essentially they take the crappiest crap. Like, for example, the Yukudi, anti-Yukudi strategy, they probably find the crappiest crap and then they promote that. So it's a reverse, a cultural inversion. And they've been doing it in the States for a while. You could watch the Blues Brothers. That was sort of a production values. They put a lot of money into it. I think Russians were involved in the making of that film. Let's not forget the 68ers were just, like, I would say second or third wave radical leftists funded by KGB. But they were precipitated by the first and second wave, which the first wave was officially launched in 1919. So by 68 or 1980, let's also consider the context. Ronald Reagan pushed back on them, but he had not done that when that movie was released. So just think of how much influence they were able to garner up until that time, and how much money they had invested or had to invest at that time to essentially troll American culture and misrepresent it to itself, and do it as a comedy. But it does remind me of the Diamond Cast. I don't think that's a Russian film. Russians had a film industry too, and intellectuals. they also were jamming Russian culture as the radical class, and they did it primarily through film. So that they couldn't place people in the United States at that time, I think that's a bit of a stretch. And the Nazis came up in that film too. Remember, all Russians have a hard-on for Nazis. Like, you'll hear them use the word, or even, Fifth Column stooges in the West use the word Gestapo, but they don't use the word Stasi, because that doesn't really exist in their memory war. It's just a one-way street, which the Nazis were the last gasp of perverted Western culture, and they defeated that, and they will just permanently stooge it and whatever, do it to it, keep bringing it up like little broken robots. But just forget the whole despicable legacy of communist rule in Eastern Europe since 1945. All those dead people, they don't exist to leftoid robots. So it's Stasi, not Gestapo. And is Germany closer to the Stasi now, under leftoid rejects? And are they capitalist too? What are they? Are they Venezuelan? Are they socialist? I don't know. How Bulgarian are they? You have to get some scientists to figure that one out. Okay, so coming back to that parroting of right positions. Who does that? Well, look, Elon Musk does that, and he has a PR team behind him who portrays him as that. Where his real allegiances lies, nobody knows, but he does have factories in China, so that's sort of strange. Why would they be doing that? Well, any right, or as people on the radical left think, any position from the right totally destroys the radical left. And I think the Dictator Alliance has a problem with the radical left at this time, because the radical left in the West wants to be independent from the radical left in the East, which makes sense once you realize that you're dealing with narcissistic maniacs that can't work together, which is why they build hegemonic systems in their own countries. But on a geopolitical level, it falls apart. It does. It doesn't matter how much money they might make with Xi Jinping. They don't want too much of his influence in their backyard. And he wants more because he's a hegemon. So how's that not going to not work? But that doesn't mean that they're not essentially the same on a lot of issues. So if we consider Elon a globalist, Bagus Bilbo, who's more aligned with the Dictator Alliance, why wouldn't he take far-right talking points as an Orbanist to garner domestic support and to beat up the radical leftists, who are really an easy target for anybody who can think and isn't in their oligarchy. But that doesn't mean he has he has or holds any of those opinions his PR people feed to him. It's just a PR strategy. And of course, getting Alinskyism, getting into the right, pretending to be that, and then sabotaging it from the inside is an old technique that has been used for a long time now. Vance is one of those. Who else? Orban. I'm not going to say Trump at this point, but I mean, if you come back to his last 4 years, he was a big do-nothing. So will he pull something off the second time if they even let him win the election with their fake numbers? We're going to see. Oh, wait, conspiracy alert. They call that a conspiracy when they throw elections, although, you go back to the Tammany Hall machine in New York City, or just look at what a a pile of dog crap Chicago's political establishment is made up of, and you're telling me they're not haven't been throwing or gerrymandering elections? It's ridiculous. Is money by influence? What about Jimmy Hoffa? Are we just going to forget American history here? What the hell? No, there was almost a revolution. Didn't look that way, but they claim there was one, and it was all because people said they faked the election. I don't know. Do you believe them on that one? I don't know. It seems a little fishy to me, doesn't it? So yeah, big globalists, Baggins, and Bilbos, don't believe them just because they parrot some talking points that make the radical left look ridiculous, because they do engage in infighting all the time. I mean, in some ways you can consider Ukraine an extension of that too. Just two narcissistic outfits and a lot of captive population in between those disputes, where there should really be none to any logical, virtuous, practical person, but that's not the people running things, is there? Now, look, don't think for a second that I'm making any type of false comparison or false equivalencies here. I am behind Ukrainians, but I didn't necessarily support the idea not to have elections because I'm not real keen on their current administration, but essentially they're still representing the existential interest of Ukraine, at least in as regards to fighting a defensive war, but that's about it. There'd probably be better people to do that if they had if they didn't have the current crop of cronies in. But again, I'm hoping that will change soon, but we don't know. But in any case, yes, they are in a fight for existential survival, and so they should be supported regardless. You know, all the Russian talking points don't add up. Whatever administration they have is not as bad as the Russian version of it, although it has the potential to be that. But it isn't there yet. I mean, the East, you have to remember, the East was typified by human trafficking, i.e. slavery, going back to Genghis Khan. So it's really competing slavers in those zones that are just unabashedly with very few how to put it, sophistry on top, rhetorical sophistry. It's just running people into the ground and telling them what to do. Just different factions of that. And if you look at Crimea, that was a great place to look at because you had the Turks in on that for centuries. You had Moscovia in on that for centuries, and you had, let's just say, other mercenary groups in on that for centuries. I mean, there was a Khanate. What was it? There was the Khazar Khanate. Was that Genghis Khan, or was that an independent outfit? How far back does that go? You know, we're talking about people that, when the Silk Road fell apart, were exposed, that didn't have the military protections that they needed, and it was a large spread out area, and a bunch of predatory tribes with a bunch of mumbo jumbo that allowed them to predate on people, including the Vikings to a certain degree, which connects Dublin. You know, there was a slave trade there, and where did that come from? Well, there was rivers that have now been discovered where the Vikings did sort of a circuitous route, came in. There was a land part to their logistics that went through Eastern Europe came out the Baltics, and then you had Dublin, Ireland, and then they came down. They went down the coasts, France, Normans there. You had Spain, then you had the entire Mediterranean. So we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of years of this, and sort of modern characteristics applied to that. At some point, Christians banned the process, but that was just the Christians. The other tribes, they never gave up slavery, never saw any reason to. They have a dual morality. So it's moral for the people in the group, and out-group outsiders are fair game. So Christians, you have to realize that. Be Christian to Christians, but as far as other tribes, they'll operate on the pretense that you should treat them that way, but actually they don't believe in treating you that way. So should you treat people that way? I don't know how far you could take that before you start having bad results, but a lot of people have, including Christians in Egypt, who were the descendants of Greeks and the original inhabitants there, some seafaring peoples as well. And now how's that worked out for them? Well, you don't know about that. Well, if you're a Christian, you should look into that, because it's about as enlightening as South Africa is for the rest of Europe, should they adopt policies that deny them an existence on an ethno level. Well, it's wrong to have in-groups for out-groups, but out-groups maintain their in-groupism no matter what. But utopianism, that's going to work. That's what radical leftists say, and they're so believable, you should believe them. And if you don't believe them, they get violent, don't they? That's believable. Not really. Okay, so what else? People, go back to flip phones. These smartphones are dumb phones. Radical left is in IT. So you need to start taking precautions. Get off the grid. Talk to people you know. Vet people you don't know. We're in sort of the Middle Ages, high-tech Middle Ages. And if you just, I'm not important, not going to target me. The Soviet model, they were listening to everyone. And taking, you just don't even know what can be done to you and to other people just because they don't like you, just because you're against their model. So take precautions, get off these smartphones. Apple is a ridiculous company. Any company that says designed in X and made in China on their products is cooked. Avoid them. So Apple, no. Maybe there's some Android versions that people can tweak for privacy. Even those I wouldn't really trust. I mean, if you have to use it, do it, but realize it should only be used for limited things. Now, Facebook, maybe for business, I get that. No personal stuff or just a place name, just like LinkedIn, if you have to use it for business, but keep all personal correspondence on the level as if some KGB people or radical leftists were reading everything you wrote on those platforms, because they probably do. And that's not good for you, your family, or anybody worth a damn. So don't take these things lightly. And that sounds sort of paranoid, but I think people haven't been paranoid enough. A lot of these people in the West were too soft. They thought the Cold War was over. It was really just beginning with hybrid characteristics, and now we see that the political class is cooked, financial class is cooked. In a lot of cases, religion, education is cooked. And this is just the way it is. It's not what anybody wanted, except sadists, schemers, and psychopaths, essentially. But world history can take downturns, and oh yeah, all the policies of South Africa. Like, remember, in the BRICS alliance, Goldman Sachs creation, Wall Street, NYC. You can see how people live there. If it's not some type of fake propagandistic creation like Channel 4 comes up with, like fake people on the street interviews that look strange, and parrot radical leftist positions. Not those types of documentaries, but real people. You can see how people are living, and a lot of people are living off-grid. They take over the infrastructure, and it's sort of back to the Stone Age, but that's not the worst thing in the world if you do it right. So yeah, look into that. As far as getting into big businesses, yeah, that's probably not gonna work, but that's okay. A lot of those corporate drones, they don't really get anything out of it other than money, and then money in a decaying social, economic, and cultural system isn't really worth all that much, is it? You might want to redefine quality of life in a different way than they do right now, and profit by that. But yeah, what's that? Oh, what else? Yeah, that's about it. But mobilize people. I still think we can turn it. Stay optimistic, but stay realistic. Hit that coffee link. A lot of you cheap as dirt people have an opportunity to get some good karma out of that. Don't be a coward in supporting other journalists out there that are really doing us all a great service. So don't just hit my coffee link. Spread that funny money around to people who deserve it. And this could be podcasts, they could be videos, YouTube creators. And look into other social media platforms that haven't been captured by radical leftists. Again, be very careful about the ones you're on, and maybe get off or fade the ones you're on. So what is it that I want to tell Bulgarians, Eastern Europeans in general, and Ukrainians specifically, is that, yeah, obviously all of the Russian corrosive elements targeted the USA specifically, subversively, to undermine democracy and the Bill of Rights and freedom in general, and that they've been largely successful via conduits that appeal to money people like gangsters, criminals, venture capital, banking, and also some of the worst, despicable historical elements, such as the Confederacy post the Confederacy. So Gone with the Wind, look at them, and their uppity blacks and their house servants that serve them. Those are the people that the Russians supported. So they have a whole fake alternative history regarding the USA and Anglo-Saxons in general. So this is your wake-up call. They debauched, degraded, subverted the culture in Anglo-Saxon territories as well as in your thousands of year old Eastern European regions. So if that seems surprising to you, it really shouldn't. So don't blame Americans for the wrong version of Americanism that may or may not be served to you at this time. You have to be able to differentiate authentic Americans that understand George Washington and a lot of other things versus the psych lab version of Americanism that may or may not be served to you at this time in the form of hybrid cultural, social, economic, or any other form of attack. Please do differentiate. You will be doing yourself and true Americans and everyone else that loves freedom democracy and a lot of other different values that may or may not be associated with politics. But some people said family values. But a lot of it has to just do with authenticity and other things. Don't forget that, please. Do make a difference where you are, and don't blame Americanism in general, because that's a brand they've been trying to wreck since forever, because it was really the only alternative. But there's an alternative within the country. I want to just give you that nuance. Please, please, please try to make different, how should we say, distinctions between true Americanism and the fake version of it, and the radical leftist misinterpretation of Americanism, including their alternative history, which is totally false. Yes, there was a South. It had plantations where blacks were actually above white trash, and that was perpetrated even after they lost the Civil War via banker friends and global intrigue. Londongrad is a nexus for all of that anti-American, anti-Westernism, and global finance. So please, please, please look at these things a little bit more carefully. Do realize that there are millions of Americans that are not represented by that in any way, and that they are honorable just as you are, and it's incumbent on us all to find new paths in difficult times and to find friends despite all of these things, and to be very careful about how you do that going forward, because it does matter to us all. When I show up in Bulgaria, I want to see smiling faces with authentic friends that understood what I said, because I know you exist. But yeah, the KGB version of Bulgaria, nobody wants to go there, or a new version of it, or your damn lawyers or criminals or gangsters that are all on that kind of wavelength. Or we got BRICT alliance. You're dealing with Turkey. You're in many ways very exposed, and I feel a lot of concern for you going forward. But in many ways, you're also very honorable because of all of those things. So this is your special kind of fate that God has given to you. So do not look down on your fate. Do not look down on Americans. Do not look down on this modern attempt, this new attempt to undermine us all, and make decisions that are best for you and best for Western civilization as a whole going forward. Thank you.